Hello everybody, my name is Kara, and today I'm here with a movie discussion review. It's been a while since I've done one of these, and I feel like this is still actually bookish because it's an adaptation of a book, which is an adaptation or retelling of a play. And that is, I'm going to talk about Ophelia, which is directed by Claire... I should have checked. I'll put her name on the screen. It's the one starring Daisy Ridley, and the reason I watched this recently is because it was our watch-along for the All the World's a Page readathon, which is a Shakespeare-themed readathon, and I had never seen this movie before, and I have some thoughts. So I thought I would put those in a video. I'll let you know when we get into spoilers because I will probably have to do quite a few spoilers from this discussion because there are specific things that the movie does that I want to talk about. Like spoilers not just for the original play Hamlet, but like for this specific retelling that does change some things. So kind of overall thoughts, I am glad that I have seen this movie now. I'm glad that I did it as part of the readathon. I think that was a fun way to experience it. Like, you know, we were live tweeting it and that was a great time. And I also think it is worth watching. Like if you're at all interested in the idea, I think it is worth seeing to see how you feel about it. I do wonder like if your feelings on the original play Hamlet or your feelings on the book that this is based on, which I have not read, I wonder how much that would affect your feeling on this adaptation overall, because I really love Hamlet, like that play. That's one of my favorite Shakespeare plays, and I think maybe that made me a little pickier about certain aspects that this movie changed or kept the same. So I think that's something that could affect your feelings on this movie. Like for example, if you really hate Hamlet as a character, maybe this is a good movie for that, because of the very confused way they portray him. But as somebody who does like the play and who finds Hamlet a complex and sympathetic character in some places, again, some of that depends on how you interpret his actions and especially his interactions with Ophelia, but I do find Hamlet to be fairly sympathetic in some ways. And so that is one way that I think my feelings or thoughts on the original play would affect my feelings on this movie. But I'll start with the things that I did like. Visually, this movie is gorgeous. Like the costumes and the sets and just like the atmosphere and the aesthetic is really, really beautifully done. I do think it's a very aesthetically pleasing movie. I think that the cast was fantastic. Like the acting is really, really good. I think all of the main actors did a really good job, even some of them who I think had a difficult job to do in terms of the script they were given. But like I think that like Daisy Ridley did a great job. I loved Tom Felton as Laertes, which is not just because I love Tom Felton anyway. I genuinely think he did a really good job. I think the actor playing Hamlet did a fairly good job, again considering what he was given to work with especially. And I think Gertrude did a really good job as well. Especially like in the earlier parts of the movie when she had, I think, more to work with. And then also there were some specific scenes that I think were fantastic, and I think probably at this point this is the spoiler warning for the rest of this video. So if you don't want to be spoiled for this specific adaptation and some of the things they change or don't change about Hamlet, thank you for watching and I will see you later. But I think that there were some scenes in this movie that were fantastically done. Like the scene with Ophelia giving out the flowers, like that madness scene was fantastic. I think it was done so well. I really actually liked the choice to have Claudius and Gertrude get to know each other and have some kind of relationship before the king's death. I think that made Gertrude a much more sympathetic and interesting character. I think that added an interesting like dynamic to the story. And I like that some of these changes are things where we're not told they happen in the play, but it would actually fit in really well with what happened. Like with Hamlet and Ophelia's secret marriage and everything. Like the movie says that they got married, which I think is an interesting choice. I really loved the way the Get Thee to a Nunnery scene was played. I think that was so interesting, and that was another one where it fits in with what the original play says, but because of what they add and because of the perspective they add, it gives you a completely different feeling than maybe you would have reading the play or seeing the play. So I really loved that. So there were some really, really fantastic scenes and choices made. I just think that overall there were not enough of those to balance out the other issues that I had with the movie. So one of the biggest overarching issues I had with the movie is I don't see what they were trying to do or say, which for me personally is a pretty severe problem. I know not everybody agrees with that, but for me that's one of the quickest ways to kind of turn me off a story, is if I don't see what they're even getting at. Like I can't see the intention behind it, because I think I believe every piece of art has an intention. Whether or not you like that intention, it has something it's trying to communicate, and I don't really see what this movie was doing maybe. Like, because the ending, it tries really hard to make you feel like it's kind of a girl power, like, oh, Ophelia's telling her own story and like all of that, which I love that Ophelia survives in this movie. But I don't love the way that the movie's ending is, I don't think, supposed to be a happy ending. Like, I don't think they're expecting you to be completely satisfied with everything that happens, but I think they want you to feel like more positive than negative. and I didn't. Like, I'm not asking for every major character to survive. Like, this is Hamlet. I know that's not going to happen. But for example, I think having Laertes make it would have been nice. And I think that would have made the ending stronger because, like, we see that Laertes and Ophelia are really close. Like, I really love the way their relationship is shown in this movie. And then he presumably gets murdered with everybody else at the end of the movie. And we don't even see Ophelia react to that or find out about that. It's like she doesn't even know or care. And I just think that was a real missed opportunity. Like, I think they went for the cheap, easy, like, generic girl power ending instead of actually engaging with what it means that she has lost everybody that she cares about. So that really annoyed me. I also think that just in general, the strong female character angle was very heavy-handed, and there were some places where it worked. Like, there's some really great lines of dialogue where it's like, yes, it's very obvious what you're communicating here, but I'm okay with it, you know, like, I was on board. And it's not that I disagree with their messages. Like, I think one of the messages of the movie is that powerful men take advantage of women just because they can. And I think, like, I agree that that's an important thing to show, but I think that they couldn't really stick to that all the time. Like, there were some times where they just made it so clunky that it's like, even though I agree with your point, it's not really interesting to watch because it's, like, just done so cheesily almost. But also, they weren't even consistent with it. And that brings me to another big problem I had, which is this movie has no idea how they want you to feel about Hamlet. And not in a way that is very complex and interesting, because one of the things that I think is really great about the play Hamlet is that Hamlet as a character is very confusing and complicated, and you can feel sympathy for him while also being very angry and frustrated with him. And, like, I feel like the original play Hamlet portrays the main character in a way that is inconsistent, in a way that feels meaningful, and in a way that feels like a real person. Whereas in this movie, it just felt like the movie didn't know what it was doing. Because there were lots of parts where it seemed like we were setting up Hamlet to be just another man abusing his power, which I think is one way they could have gone. But then there's a lot of other scenes where they try to portray him as an actual good love interest. And those are diametrically opposed things, and I think they needed to pick one, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense. Hamlet as a character doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense why he's, like, such an important part of this movie, because, like, yes, the movie is about Ophelia, but her relationship with Hamlet is a fairly significant part of the story. And to not know what Hamlet is there for, how you're supposed to feel about him as a character, I think makes the whole movie feel a lot weaker. And it's just weird that, like, their relationship gets so much screen time and is so important in the story, and yet it doesn't actually do anything. Like, it doesn't do anything definitively, I guess. Yeah, so that really irritated me as well. Like, even setting aside the fact that I like Hamlet in the play, I think even if I try to separate my feelings, just looking at this movie on its own terms, I think he's a very messy character, and not in a way that feels complex. It just feels unfinished, you know? Like, it just feels like the people working on this movie genuinely had no idea what to do with him. Also, something I didn't like about this movie, but it didn't bother me as much as it normally would because frankly I expected it, is there's definitely a not like other girls feeling from this movie, which is weird because sometimes it's called out or, like, it's done in such a way that you as the audience are supposed to be like, ugh, really? But then there's sometimes where they just play it straight. Like, they're just very genuinely endorsing that idea. Like, there's a part where Ophelia is like, I don't remember if she actually says this in dialogue or she says something similar, but it's like, she's not like other ladies in waiting. And it's ridiculous and annoying, but, like, I kind of expected it. Like, and I think that's part of my problems with this movie. Like, I just feel like the not like other girls thing is one of the ways that this movie comes off as very paint by numbers, very much like the most bland version of a feminist Hamlet retelling that you could expect. Feminist or just female-centered even, although I do think this movie is trying to be feminist, which, you know, leads me to another issue, and that is, like, Ophelia is clearly the only woman we're supposed to really like in this movie. Like, the other ladies in waiting are all horrible to her, and I understand why her birth would make them look down on her, but I don't think it's a lot to ask that she has at least some women that she can rely on. Like, for a while I was really liking the way they portrayed Gertrude. I thought she was very complex and interesting. And then that didn't really happen either. And like some of the connections and the choices and the changes that they made are things where like I don't disagree with the message you're sending. Like this is what I was saying earlier. It's like I don't disagree. I just think you could have said it in a way that is a little more thoughtful, that has a little more nuance and more depth, or that was just a more interesting story. Yeah, and I take issue with the way that they decided some things to change and some things to keep. And I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of getting less coherent as I go on. You can tell I don't have any notes for this video. I just have my feelings and my thoughts because I like literally just finished this movie a little while ago. But yeah, so I think like I generally use my same 5-star scale for movies as I do for books. So if I were using that, I think I'd give this movie somewhere between a 2.5 and a 3 stars. Like I didn't really like it, but there were some flashes of brilliance, and I'm just sad that more of the movie wasn't like that, you know? But like I was saying, there were things I enjoyed about it. I am glad I saw it. I do think it's one that's worth seeing, especially because I think I could see people having very, very different responses to this movie depending on what they're wanting from it, what they're coming to it with, what they feel about the original Hamlet play. So this is not like a movie that I think everyone is going to feel the same way I do about. So please let me know if you guys have watched Ophelia, what you thought of it, or if you are planning to seek it out. Like I said, I'm not like steering people away from it. I think just it could have been really, really good, and it was just fine. Like it could have been so much more than it was, you know? Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!